Hello, my name is Melinda, and I am doing my presentation on the developmental and family life cycle theory. We will be going over the key concepts, the stages, the evolution of the theory, the key definitions, the use of it in the family nursing, and the research using this theory. So the developmental and life cycle theory is made by Duval in 1977, and it uses the nuclear family as a basis. This is a traditional family where it is a mother, father, and children. It is based on that classic Anglo-Saxon family. It uses the family that evolves through predictable stages that are unique challenges and opportunities for growth. The key concepts for this theory are that the family interactions and evolves over time. The family experiences stress greatest at transitions between these stages. These stages are 7 different stages that he has created, and the when you go through these stages at stress at these stages, it is normative changes to be happy at the predictable transition times, and it is non-normative changes that occur outside the sequence and outside of the stage and cycle. For example, if someone was to die at like the age 35 instead of in the age of 70s or 90s. The 7 stages are here listed for you in the cycle. The first is when you're unattached or a young adult, and then you get married. This is the first major life cycle, family cycle, because it's the coupling is the first major obstacle of coming together as a new family. Then the young family becomes with a young child. That young child is comes together, and that's the first time they become parenting. Then you become parenting with preschool kids or adolescents, depending on which cycle you're looking at. The adolescence is a major change in the family dynamic because those children are becoming more independent. And then there is called the launching. And this can take very many different ideas of how it looks. However, this is when the older children go off on their own. This could be them going off to college. This can be them staying at home and attending classes on their own. This is them going to work, but this is them taking on a more adult role and the parents taking a more hands-off role. This is then the adults becoming more in their latter years and becoming more independent and going more back to that smaller household. And then they become more unattached ones when one of the partners dies. So they come back to that unattached cycle. Now, this has theory has evolved. In the 2000s, Carter and Golden started to look at this theory and modernize it for the modern family. They noticed that this theory was no longer the traditional Anglo-Saxon family, and that a lot of these roles were not taking into account the families that were seen in the normal everyday family. They weren't taking into those experiences that those families were taking into account. So they started looking at the family as the experiences that the families were going through versus just those stages. So they took into account more of experiences such as a family member already exiting, such as with a divorce, or a family member coming in, such as with a new partner coming in, such as a step parent, or a recoupling, such as a second marriage or something like that. Now, Pelton started looking at the life cycle of the theory for couples who decided to actively go children free. So this did not take into account the children part of the family. So their choices were how do the couple navigate through life and those life cycles to have a support system later on in life that is not involving children, those kind of things. And how does that look? So these are different theorists that took the same stages and then they prolongated onto it. The key definitions for this theory for family, family is the basic social unit that is optimal level of intervention. Health is when the family has the increased ability to deal with the stresses and changes, utilizing short-term and long-term adaptive strategies to make the family more resilient. Um, the environment that they are working in is the place in which the family resides socially, spiritually, physically, financially, and also in relation to one another. So that doesn't necessarily mean just the household they're in. It doesn't mean that they're in the same state, because this also takes into account people who are, for example, overseas. So that is all in their environment. Nursing. Um, Nursing in this aspect is used to better understand and to identify those transition times and periods in which those stages are coming up, and also to mitigate and to identify some of those new roles in which the family is finding themselves in, so to help define those transitional areas. Some of the key theories are being used in the family nursing role. One of the ones that has been used is in behavioral children's for psychology. They use this family life cycle concept in identifying what were considered um, normative transitions in the regular families to identify different if the psychological interventions were actually helpful for behavioral health children. So they're see if those are actually like working or not. Another one is using a retrospective approach. They were interviewing children and adolescents who are having eating disorders to find out what instigating incidences were causing them to have these disorders sometimes. So these were a lot of times looking back into those events that were going on with McCormick and stuff like that. So they're looking at those family experiences. Then the other one that they're using is that transitions into parenthood. Now, this happened a lot in Europe, and they're using family nurses to help transition parents into that first time parenthood. And they're finding that people are much more successful going into that part of their stage in life, and then finding that transition much more comparable to their that is traumatic. So one of the first research projects I found was actually a dueling ambitions of a highly achieving woman in a family development pilot study. Now this one is very interesting because it takes a non-traditional family, which is a woman where most women are actually like 40% of women in the US are now the breadwinners of their families, which is a non-traditional role and non-traditional in that family. And it looks at how they are working in these stages. So in these stages, they are finding that they are having to find things like self-reliance and hustle and supportive relationships and resources and also barriers. Um, those are all the different things that they've also had to face in order to relieve these stressors. The negative things about this is actually a single case study. However, this is these two kind of looking at different things that they can go about looking at. Another one that they looked at was in China. They looked at the workforce and how, like, the life cycles and how different parts of their life cycle were going into different family stresses and different obligations, and how that was actually by different life cycles where they're feeling that they had more stress because their women are now being pulled back into the workforce, and also they're having more people have more stress in life overall because it's more industrial now. So that was in coincide with as well again with the high amount of stress in the adulthood where you have children. Finally, My summary is that this is based off the married traditional familyhood. It was based on the stages that are universally faced by all families. And the reason why I chose this one is because the family I'm working with is a multi-transitional family right now. Then the next couple of years they'll have another kid launching, and they have another one who's just in adolescence now. And also they are a nuclear family, so I think it'll be very interesting to see how they work. Thank you very much.